Okay, hey everybody, it is Krista, and I am not in my kitchen today. I know if you are here for my recipes and kitchen content, that is not what today is. Today I want to talk to you about what to plant in the garden, which for me is probably going to be a lot different for you. So, I want to talk about, and I have my trusty little book here, so bear with me, and I hope this actually doesn't get too long. But first of all, if you haven't done garlic, it's a little too late for garlic. I did not get my garlic kit, and I will not have garlic this year, and I actually really enjoy growing garlic. Onions, you probably needed to have already started those if you're going to do them from seed, but you can still get onion sets and started seeds from your local nurseries. All right, so what we are going to start with, I have already started my tomato plants. My last frost date, last frost date, which is what you need to know, is around April 15th. So we are, we're coming up at the beginning of March. So we're about 6-7, if you have middle schoolers, you know, we're about 6-7 weeks, maybe 6 to 8 weeks, let's say that, 6 to 8 weeks out from when I can plant tomatoes, which is about the time that you need to start them. Now, I sell plants. I'm going to do a couple early sales this year. Usually I don't do it until May, but I've got a couple opportunities to sell seedlings in April. So I am planting some things I planted really early so that I could take those to the April sales. So I am only 5 weeks away from my first sale in April, which corresponds with, I think it's like the weekend before you are expected last frost date. Now, I don't ever plant anything out April 15th. That is frost tender, because I have learned my lesson. And even though that's our average last frost date, the past couple years, that has not been our last frost date. It has come closer to the end of April. So, I personally will not plant out until usually at least after my daughter's birthday, which is the end of April, but sometimes May 1st. However, other people will, and to get these plants to the sale, I need nice, thick, healthy plants. In fact, I have learned that the larger, the better. A lot of people like to buy their tomato plants very big. So sometimes I'll sell them best in like the 1-gallon pots, and you know, they have a nice thick stem. They've got beautiful branches. Some of them will even have little flowers on them, and that's how people want them. So I planted a lot of tomatoes, and I planted a lot of them early. Well, here they are. Now some of these have water in them, so they are a little bit heavy. Now, it may not look like I have a ton of tomatoes in this tray, but some of these have multiple tomatoes in one cell, and I will separate those and plant them further down the stem, because a few of these did get a little leggy because I had my light too far. Some of these are, you know, nice and short. And then I had some that did not come up. I am trying to get rid of old seed packets this year as part of my declutter program. So I don't want to throw seeds away. I also don't want to grow all the seeds that I have. And so the past 2 years, I've been trying to really use up the older seeds and seed packets. And so I'll plant the things that I want, and then a couple things that maybe I'm not so sure about, but they've only got a few seeds in them, and I want to get rid of those. This year I was very, very careful about what tomato plants I am doing. Last year I used quite a bit of my seeds up, and then this year I used pretty much the rest of them for tomatoes. I've got a few tomato plants that just don't do well for me, so I didn't even bother this year. I may go ahead and get rid of those seeds. I'm not sure. However, I have a couple old packs that just did not. So my beefsteak, both of these right here are beefsteak, and I only have like two, maybe, I think there's two there. So 3 out of this, and I seeded heavily in here. It was a really old pack of beefsteaks that I had gotten from my dad. My Brandywine's germination's okay. Not the best, but it's not bad. There's a cluster of them that came up right here, but then a couple cells that did not come up. Those were probably 4 to 5 years old. Seeds will hold, especially if you like freeze them. I don't freeze mine because I go through seeds so quickly for the most part, except when I'm trying new things. That's where I get in trouble because I'll buy like all these different kinds of crazy things. And then it's like, oh, now I have a whole bunch of seeds left. But anyway, so I did have a little bit of the triple L crop. Now, I tried that a few years ago because I had the full intention of getting my high tunnel covered. And those are really a made to grow in the high tunnel type situation, in a greenhouse situation. So those are bred for that. And I was like, oh, I'm going to get my tunnel covered this year. I never got my tunnel covered, y'all. It is still out there. I still have 2 arches to put up. And prices, from when I bought that thing to now, the prices on like the plastic and the clips and all the stuff to finish it have doubled. And I can't fit that into our homestead budget anytime soon. So I decided to go ahead and use the last of those seeds for the triple L crop and just grow them outside. I might put a couple in buckets in the greenhouse and see if I can get them to come to fruition a little bit early, but they're not a fast growing tomato. Moneymaker, these are a small variety tomato, but last year, oh my gosh, they were so prolific and so perfect that I kind of fell in love with them. So they got to 2 trays, and of course I will sell some of those because they sold fairly decently last year. Carbon was my high seller last year, so that one is heavily seeded, and the germination was fantastic. I used all of those seeds up, so I will definitely be buying more of those. And then Black Creme, not a very good grower for me here. However, I do like to have some color, so it may not be prolific, but I usually get some. And I love when I'm canning like whole tomatoes or slices of tomatoes to use later. I love having the different colors in there. It's just so beautiful to me. So I always want to have some kind of black in there. I did not have any Cherokee Purple left or any of the Black Brandywine seeds left. So Black Creme was all I had. And so the germination on it is actually really good though. And then Pink Oxheart. This one is kind of a late bloomer here. It is just now really starting to come up heavily. So I thought it was done, which those seeds were a little on the older side. I think I got those in 2021. But it's now started coming up. So sometimes patience. And then pineapple. I love pineapple. Pineapple and Dad's Sunset are always going to be in my garden. But sometimes I don't always have both at one time. Like, I really love Dad's Sunset. I used all of those last year, and so all I had this year was some pineapple. So I did not rebuy Dad's Sunset because pineapple and Dad's Sunset are very similar. Dad's Sunset is my favorite though. I did have to buy some tomatoes this year because some of my absolute favorites were not in my seed drawer because I had used them all up last year, like a good girl, right? But there are some that I absolutely have to have. So, Azoyska, have to have it. Now, Azoyska and Carbon are both Russian tomatoes, and a lot of people say they do not do well in our area, in the southeast of the United States, because they prefer the cooler temperatures, you know, probably up north. They're more popular. However, Carbon and Azoyska both are 2 of my absolute favorite tasting tomatoes. And they are probably not as prolific here as they are, or as other varieties of tomatoes. However, they are my favorites, and they both do fairly well for me. Again, they're not, just a massive producer. My Zoyshkas have been one of my top yellow producers, though. They've done well for me in the past. But a Zoyshka and Carbons will always have a place in my garden because they are my favorite flavors. And they're just my favorite tomatoes. Kellogg's Breakfast does a little better prolific-wise than a Zoyshka. And so I did get some more of those. And then Amish Paste, I did not rebuy. I am using up that packet. I did purchase some more striped Romas because I like the striped Romas, and I'm using up an older packet of Roma, which those have not come up. But this seed tray I have only done, 3 days ago. So, and I've already got little, I don't know if you can see that, little baby plants in a lot of them. So the fact that like my Azoyshka, my Kellogg's Breakfast, my Romas have not come in yet is not bothering me because it's only been 3 days. So I just have a couple over here that are just, teachers' pets. Like, they just really liked this environment, I guess. Some more that are popping up are German Johnsons. I have not grown German Johnsons in a few years. In fact, they used to be my absolute favorite tomato. Very, very popular here in the South. My mom always had German Johnsons. So I didn't grow them. German Johnsons and beefsteaks and Romas were like the only thing my mom grew. And so 20 years ago when I started gardening, I didn't want to grow those. I didn't want to grow the same beans. Like, growing up, my mom had dialed in the varieties that grew well around here. Now, to be fair, in the 80s, 70s and 80s, your seed companies in the area, local seed companies, and even like your local Lowe's and stuff, they would only get in a few varieties. They would not have the plethora of varieties that we have available now. I don't even think the amount of varieties that we have now were available because a lot of these have been bred and come across, around the world and been really fine-tuned and made available through smaller companies like rareseeds.com. And so back when we were growing up, the varieties that would be available to our families and to, large farmers or whatever would be the varieties that grew best in this area. And so my mom grew up growing Romas, beefsteaks, and German Johnsons, and Yellow Boy. And that is what she grew. And that is the only thing she grew. And I need to snooze this alarm. Okay. Snooze. Okay. And then for beans, she would grow half runners. And that is all she would grow. So the beauty in that is that they were growing for subsistence. They were growing for nutrition. They were growing the best absolute varieties for this area. So me being the rebellious one that I am, I get a house. I decide, I'm going to garden. I'm not going to garden the same way that my parents garden. I'm going to do something different. So I do all this research, and this is back in 2006. I do all this research, and I come up with raised beds, which was not as popular back in 2006. So we put in raised beds. I absolutely love it. My mom calls me crazy. And then my garden is stunning, and it's amazing. And she's like, I used to want raised beds. No, you didn't, Mom. But that's okay. We love you, Mom. Anyway, that is a little side story. Anyway, what I have come to learn is that my mother was right in the aspect of the most prolific varieties that they used to grow to subsist on are the ones that do best in this area. And a lot of the older people who come to the markets are always asking me for German Johnson tomatoes. So those have been added back into my repertoire. Beefsteaks, I'm attempting to get back into my repertoire. I have been growing those the past few years. However, this year, the seedlings are not looking so great. However, I can go down to the nursery and get a pack of whatever does not come up. So that is my backup. I always have a backup, especially if you're doing something like I am, where you're trying to use up old seeds, but also still, have enough for your garden, and for me, enough to sell. Your backup is a local nursery. Now, I would not go to the local nursery and then turn around and sell those. That would be ridiculous, because that's not cost effective for me. However, I'm going to have plenty of the ones I am trying to sell, like the mortgage lifters have become popular for me, the carbons, the azoyska, and I'm sure I can sell some German Johnsons if I want to. Those I'm going to have plenty of. I just won't have a lot of the beefsteaks, or what was the other one? That's the pink ox hearts, but I wasn't planning on selling those anyway because they're more of a paste tomato, so I'm growing those for sauce. However, back to this. So German Johnson, the whole point of that last 5-minute tirade was German Johnsons have made it back into my rotation after all of these years. I did grow them when I first started out, those and yellow boys, because that was what I was familiar with. And then I got away from it and started experimenting with all these other things. But in doing that, the great thing is I found new favorites. I found the carbon. I found the azoyska. I found the mortgage lifter, all of which are some of my mom's favorites now too. The mortgage, she always asks for mortgage lifters and azoyskas from me, plants. So there's the beauty and the complete turnaround of that. Now over here, I have orange Hawaii marigolds, 2 of those, and Kilimanjaro white marigolds. I definitely put marigolds out all over my garden, and I want a lot of them. And I also have one dark opal basil in here. So let me get another tray out. We have already talked about the tomatoes. I don't want to get the pepper tray out because it's the one that's tucked behind this other shelf, so it's a little bit hard to get out. But I will go over the ones that I have. I have the giant red peppers, and I have 2 packs of that because I will sell pepper plants. And I have 2 packs of the green bell peppers. I had 2 packs of the poblano peppers. However, those did not seed well for me. It was a brand new pack that I had just bought. And I think I have 2. So sometimes your fresh packs aren't any better than your older packs. And then I have 2 packs of the jalapeno. I'm sorry about the lighting going in and out. It's because of the backlighting. And then I did 1 pack of banana peppers. Brand new pack. Nothing. And then Black Beauty eggplants, Japanese eggplants, and Rosita, whatever it's called. It's like the little white and purple eggplant. So that's all in that tray over there. And then I have onions down here. I've already done a short on the onions and what to look for as far as your area, short day, long day. And then I do have one entire tray of just lettuce varieties. Now, when you're growing lettuce, you do need to look at what is going to grow best for your area. I have seeded several options, both heading lettuce, cut and come again, Paris Island, which is like a romaine type lettuce. Some of those don't do quite as well in my area, but I have done well with them. And what I'm looking for when I grow lettuce is I am looking for 1, something that's going to sell at the market, 2, something that's going to do well in this area, and 3, a lot of mix, because I eat salad ever since, I've always eaten salad. I do love salad. But ever since I had the pancreatitis last year, was it August? Whatever. And I switched to a more carnivore raw, or not a raw carnivore. I don't eat raw meat. But carnivore / raw food, whole food diet. Like, it has to be from my garden, and not necessarily from my garden, because like I've been buying fresh vegetables from the store over the winter because I was not prepared to eat this way through the winter. But whole ingredients, things that I can grow and do grow. So I eat probably, I don't even, 5, 6, 7 salads a week. We have a salad night on Wednesday nights, and all of the things are cut up. I've showed that. I believe it was in a short. I may have showed it in a longer video for meal prep. But just all the vegetables are cut up, the chicken's cut up, and you just build your own salad with what you want in it. I do that every Wednesday so that when we come back from church, everything's done and prepped, and all I have to do is set the containers out, take the lids off, and we can get a quick salad when we get home. But then we eat those. We eat on that for like lunch, and sometimes I will do that 2 nights for dinner, 2, 3 nights. Like, I'll substitute something like steak instead of chicken. That is one of the easiest things for me, and I love it, and we all eat it. So even my kids. So we eat a ton of salad. And so I want to make sure, because I love mixing the romaine and the mixed spring greens, that I have a variety of greens in my garden that I can do the same thing and mimic it and alleviate the cost of the store. So that is what I'm aiming to do this year, is to fill in that gaps, because this was August, September when I started eating that way, and it was really too late to plan to get through the winter somehow with that. So, and I don't know if I can, because I really like the fresh peppers and the fresh lettuce. So I'm figuring that out, but I know for late spring, summer, and fall, I want to grow enough to alleviate purchasing any of that at the stores. So I have started with a nice variety and an entire tray of lettuces, and I will succession plant lettuce by seed throughout the coming months. So all the way through fall, because I will tuck them in like behind the rows of green beans, behind the trellises of tomatoes, to help block some of the sun. And also I will do shade cloth and things like that. I don't know if it's going to work during the middle of summer around here when we get up to almost 100 degrees and we're humid and gross and nasty, but I'm going to try. So we are starting out with an entire tray of varied lettuces. So we've done onions, we've done lettuces. This beautiful tray right here, and there goes my alarm again. I'm going to have to pause this, but I am determined to get as far as I can. Now that I've choked, this is my gorgeous tray of cabbage. I've also done a variety of cabbage. Now, my dad, he is a flat Dutch guy. He loves flat Dutch cabbage. And I like flat Dutch cabbage. My favorite, however, is, what is it called? Stone something. And I don't actually have that here because I was out of those seeds. Hands down, my favorite cabbage, though. I was a good girl and did not buy more of those seeds because I had so many other varieties that I am foregoing the stonehead, I think is what it's called, stonehead cabbage in my spring garden. I am going to get more of those seeds for the fall. But I was good, and I was trying to use up ones that I already had. So I have Golden Acre cabbage here, all seasons cabbage. Of course, lots of flat Dutch. I have 4 flat Dutch, and there's multiple in each one. So I probably won't even get to plant all of this out. Then I have Copenhagen. I do love Copenhagen cabbage. I have some Savoy. I have not had good luck with Savoy. I have grown 1 or 2 heads of that compared to what I planted. That's not a very good return, but we're going to try it. And since I want to use up the seeds. And then Sapporo Giant, which is supposed to be a giant heading cabbage from Rare Seeds, which is Baker Creek. So there is my cabbage. And then Now I'm all stuffy. Okay. And then this one is more brassica type things. So we have Calabrese broccoli. I've never had good luck with Calabrese broccoli, which is a sprouting broccoli, but we're going to try it again. And in fact, y'all can, I don't know if y'all can see this, but some of these sprouted out and it almost looks like they're already dying. And I have no idea why. Because everything else in this tray looks fantastic. But that's Calabrese broccoli. Maybe, I don't know. But, I mean, this one is also Calabrese broccoli and it looks perfectly fine. I don't know. There might have been something like residue or something in that container maybe. All right. And then I have Georgia collards and champion collards. My champion collards look like they germinated way better than my Georgia collards. You know, it's funny because on the side of this one of Georgia collards that is next to that Calabrese broccoli that's not doing good, I have like, those aren't doing good. So there may be something there, or there may be some kind of bug that got in here. I don't see any bug residue or anything like that. There is a little bit of molds right there, but that is interesting. All right, and then I have purple kohlrabi, which is absolutely gorgeous. Red kale, which looks fantastic. And red acre cabbage, 2 of them that did nothing, not one plant. I think it was an old pack of seeds, but it shouldn't have been that old. I mean, maybe 4 years old. Come on now. Not one. And it's so funny because my dad was like, when I told him I planted red cabbage, he was like, I never have luck with red cabbage. And I'm like, oh, it's okay. You know, find those people that grow around you and have been growing for years and listen to their wisdom and do not rebel against them like I do. Purple sprouting broccoli. I have some of that. 2 of those. And then purple cauliflower. I was kind of going with a theme with the purple cauliflower, the purple sprouting broccoli, the red cabbage, and the purple kohlrabi. I wanted to bring lots of fun color into my garden, and the red cabbage let me down. But that's okay. All right. And we do have red kale, so it'll be okay. All right. So, that's another thing when you're planting your garden. 1, plant what does well. 2, plant what you will eat. But also try to plant the rainbow, okay? This is not a Skittles commercial. But when I was taking classes in how to teach, excuse me, when I was taking classes for like the Master Food program and how to teach kids how to eat and stuff, we taught Eat the Rainbow. But if you listen to a lot of nutritionists and stuff, and even I was watching a YouTube the other day, and it was a Korean meal prep, and even she said, eat the rainbow. So when you bring in colorful foods into your diet, you get more vitamins, more antioxidants. Different colors will often signify different vitamins and heavier antioxidants and heavier lectins and things like that that are good for you. So if you can bring variety into your diet, that's great. Also, sometimes those colorful varieties kids will try when they wouldn't try the regular. So if your kid doesn't want to touch cauliflower, bring in a purple variety and see what they do. You never know. So I was definitely trying to bring in more color and fun into the garden this year and into my market stand. I mean, very specifically into my market stand, because I am trying to upgrade my market this year. And so I really wanted a beautiful eye-catching display, because everyone always comes over when there's more color and more variety. So when the tomatoes are coming in and I have lots of different colors, it draws people in. So I wanted to do that with the brassicas and the early spring stuff as well. Now I've also started a lot of herbs, and I'm just going to run through these. Herbs are very important, and I'm having to give up my apothecary garden area this year because I'm letting the goats in that area because that is where the kudzu is strongest. So some of the things that I had established, like my comfrey, my St. John's wort, my lemon, was it lemon balm or lemon mint? I can't remember which one I had. Those came back every year, and they were very strong and luscious. I'm going to try to dig some of those up and move them. The chickens have been in there, so I hope they have not destroyed them, but I am going to try to find some of the roots and move them, but I'm giving up my herbal area. So I am having to mix in my herbs in my large garden this year, which is great. I mean, that's actually, you want to do that anyway. I usually do mix in basil and dill, and then some of my other, like calendula and things like that, because when you mix your varieties around in the garden beds, it helps with pest protection and growth and, you know, nurturing the soil. So I'm okay with doing that. I just hate that I'm losing like my comfrey and things. So hopefully I can preserve that over. But I have lots of different basils, Genovese basil. Some of my basil did not do the greatest. But then I have like my lime basil, my holy basil, my lettuce basil, and cinnamon basil. All of that did phenomenal. It's just my regular Genovese basil, which, believe it or not, was a brand new pack. It is not doing the greatest. I may have to buy some Genovese basil. I don't know. My dill is doing very well. I have Long Island and Mammoth. My crisp mint was a very old pack. I want to say it was like 6 years old. It and my peppermint did not do anything. Spearmint, I have a little bit of germination. Lemon mint did fantastic. Italian parsley, very poor germination. Curled parsley, poor germination. Those seeds were not that old. Chinese chives, nothing. Garlic chives, nothing. Boo. Cilantro and rosemary, nothing. Thyme, prolific. So even someone who's an old hat at seed starting can have some bad germination, whether it is the older seeds, which is very possible because like I said, I had some older seed packs. This is also, it could be a soil problem because I'm seeing some things on the ones that did not germinate. I am seeing some mold issues. And I do not typically have mold issues with the way I grow, but I am seeing some mold issues on the few trays that did not have good germination. So that's something to look into. All right, we are going to take a pause because I have to go get children, and then I will try to finish this video. Okay, everybody, we are back. Oh, there's my microphone. All right, so the last few trays that I started are actually flowers. Now I do have, I don't think we talked about this tray before I left, and that one is all celery and onions, more onions, so we don't really need to talk about that one. But the last few trays that I started have been flowers and some flowering herbs. They can be either or. You can use them as herbs. For example, coneflower, echinacea, but they're all edible flowers at least, and then some, you know, flowers just for beauty and pollinators. That has become very important in my garden for our honeybees as well as beauty. I mean, honestly, I've always loved mixing flowers and herbs in with my garden plants. Take it back to that 2006 again. When I put in my first raised bed garden, I had read that petunias planted with green beans would increase their flavor. It would make their, and I don't know if that's true. I did it for several years and I kind of got out of the habit. I've always kind of put petunias in the garden in different places, but then I started getting into the marigolds. I always planted marigolds as well for bug protection. But I started planting dahlias and zinnias and other things in my garden, so I kind of quit putting petunias in my garden. But that was one of the, I remember very distinctly, I have a picture of my garden, And it was so beautiful because my husband had built me this trellis for my green beans. And I had these gorgeous green beans starting to grow up and all these pretty little petunias planted around it. And it was so pretty. But flowers and edible flowers are very important to me. And so I did wait till a little bit later because these are pretty much all for me. And I will just try to fit them here, there, and everywhere in my garden. So I did some Roman chamomile and some German chamomile. And I know that one of these packs does not give me good germination, but I could not remember which one it was. So I gave each one a 4-pack, heavily seeded it, and we'll see what we get. Some of these I will also seed out, direct seed into the garden because they do a little bit better. But I'm a very visual person, so I do like to have some plants to kind of signify where things are and to help me blend things because I want some pretty beds. I don't want just each bed to be one thing because that doesn't provide a lot of protection against pests and things like that. You want to mix them. So I'm trying really hard this year to get better about mixing some things rather than having one bed this, one bed that, you know, because that's kind of the same thing as putting things in rows in traditional gardening, and that's not benefiting your little micro climates, micro environments against pest pressure and diseases and things like that. You want to spread things out. And so I'm fairly decent at putting things together in beds, but I still will like have half the bed this and half the bed that, and then a flower on the end and a flower on the end. And I'm really hoping this year to really incorporate things, but I haven't wrapped my brain around that because it's like, okay, well, how am I going to do that with trellising systems and stuff when I want to put, 100 tomato plants in the garden? I can't just do cages or whatever. So I haven't figured out all the details. So you're going to come on that journey with me this year as I redo my gardening method and try to incorporate it more into that style to help with natural pest protection and stuff. So aside from the point, we have both the chamomiles, Pacific calendula. That was the only color calendula I really had. I think I may have 1 or 2 more packs which are in the greenhouse, so I don't know how well they will produce, but that's okay. We will try. Hyssop, which is new for me this year, but it is one of those biblically mentioned herbs, and so I am trying to do some other things, which I will explain in a different video. Anise, lemon balm, Munstead lavender, and English lavender. I have not been very successful with lavender thus far, but I'm going to keep trying because I know it does grow well here. Purple coneflower, white coneflower, borage, which my bees love, and chicory, which is new for me, but that's one that a lot are mentioned a must have in medicinal medicine. So we are going to grow that this year. Okay, so now we're getting into some of the ones that I'm growing that are just for pretty. Now, nasturtiums are really good edible flowers that are great to mix into salads and things like that. They're also good for pest protection. So I do love them. They just don't grow really well in the heat of the summer. But a lot of times my nasturtiums, if I plant them in a shaded spot behind a trellis or something, they will stop blooming in the heat of the summer and then rejuvenate into the fall. So we're doing salmon nasturtiums, fiesta nasturtiums, peach, and apricot. You will notice a theme with me that I really like the oranges and the peach colors. And some of the lighter pinks, but I really love those colors. And then you throw in some yellows and some whites and it's just glorious. Okay. Feverfew, white stars, apple blossom snapdragon. Snapdragons I grew them for the first time last year. I don't have a ton of experience with those, but they were very pretty, so I want to try those again. Pink paper daisies, orange snapdragons, and then Gumfrina. I love Gumfrina. So we have red, orange, and white. And then a delphinium is new for me this year. And those are it was a blend, and it was like purple, blue, pinky purple, very lavendery colors. So I thought that would add a nice contrast. I would love to get to the point where I can have fresh bouquets for my kitchen and table, and maybe to share with people, because I love fresh flowers, but I very rarely will spend the money on myself to get those. So, and then these last ones are strictly beauty flowers. These are just things to blend into planters, to make arrangements for the porch, or to blend into, for example, baby's breath. That would be strictly for putting in bouquets. Like I said, I'm hoping to get bouquets this year for my kitchen, to keep fresh flowers in my kitchen and to share with people. So baby's breath, blue fescue ornamental grass, that is for planters. Bunny tails, which is another ornamental grass, is for both. Pumpkin on a stick, kind of both. Rare mixed dahlia, giant hybrid dahlia, dandy colorette dahlia, unwind mixed dahlia. Those are all because I love and adore dahlias. As you will see if you go to my Instagram, which I've not been active on lately, but all last summer it was pretty much a dahlia fest. Okay. And then white aster, salmon aster, China Gusford, which is like a hot pink with a white center. It's very unique looking. China Gusford aster and apricot asters. And that is because the closest thing I could find to chrysanthemum seeds was aster seeds. I think they are in the same family, even if they're not quite the same plant. Feverfew, I know, can often double in that aster chrysanthemum family. I have gotten a hold of some chrysanthemum seeds that I'm going to try this year. I'm not sure how they're going to work. Most chrysanthemums are purchased by nurseries in plug form and then grown out at the nurseries, but they have to start from somewhere. So there's got to be seeds for them. I just have not found them commercially available. So I started getting aster seeds. I have not had the best luck with those, honest to goodness, but I keep trying them until my seeds run out. A lot of these aster seeds are the last from what I bought a few years ago. So if they do not do well this year, this is their final year to try and impress me. If they do not do well, I will not be purchasing those again, so I can focus on other areas. So that is it. So there are, of course, other things I will be growing in my garden, but they do not need to be started ahead of time. Things like cucumbers and beets and squash and pumpkins, I do not need to start those ahead of time here. You can absolutely pre-seed some if you absolutely need to see where it's going to go and lay it out. And I have done that before, but they grow from seed so well that they often pass the ones that you transplant if you just put them in as soon as you can. So I did not have the space to pre-start those. Now I may move all this stuff out. I'm definitely moving some things out to the greenhouse. Like next week, I will move my cabbage and things out, and then start preparing beds. So I hope by the end of next week, beginning of the following week, those first 2 weeks of March, I am hoping to get my cabbage in the ground. But if it's not in the ground, it's definitely going to be out in the greenhouse, so I will have more space. And then honestly, once we get into mid-March, most of this will all transition to the greenhouse. Even the peppers probably will transition out there, but I will keep the heat mat on them. That way, if we have some cold nights and the greenhouse gets fairly low, those peppers really like it warm. But since I am not out in that area very much at the moment, my chickens are kind of around the greenhouse. I'm not in it, so I like to keep my plants in here so I can really keep an eye on them. But once I transition everything out to the greenhouse and I'm out there daily, 1 to 2 times a day, I may start some cucumbers and stuff because they will grow really fast. 3-4 weeks, they'll be ready to go into the ground. So I will still have plenty of time mid-March to plant things that I don't have in here to get ready. But I am out of room in here. So I wanted to get certain things done because they needed to be done so far ahead of time for reasons. But if I don't get those done, they can go straight in the ground and have plenty of time. So beans, beets, bok choy, carrots will be direct sown, beets will be direct sown, Swiss chard. I think I actually did start some Swiss chard, but a lot of my brassicas, like the chard and the spinach and the even the collards, I can, once we hit March and I transplant those out, I can also put seeds in. And so then I have succession. So I don't start all of my brassicas inside except like my cabbage and broccoli. Cucumbers will be direct sown. I showed you the eggplants. I will probably not do corn here. If I do, it would be a small gemstone variety, but I just don't feel like I have the space to dedicate to that this year. I am cutting my garden in half this year. I think I've talked about that several times on small videos when I talked about kudzu. So I have to be very careful. Peas actually need to be planted now. So those will be, when I start moving those cabbage out, I will go ahead and put the peas direct sown. Potatoes will be direct sown soon. And squash, of course, will be direct sown. I have not decided which varieties of squash I am doing. Okra will also be direct sown. So I have pretty much started everything that I needed to indoors, and then this will all transition into the greenhouse, especially when I start up potting, because I will need more room and more trays than I can fit in here when I start putting larger pots and separating all the tomatoes. So that we will start transitioning into that mode starting next week. Because next week my agenda is to clean out the greenhouse, move the cabbage out, and then I will start prepping beds for that, and then start moving the tomatoes and things out and start up potting those. So when those go out, they will immediately get up potted. And the last thing that will be in here on these shelves will probably be peppers in larger pots, because I will have room at that point. So they will stay in a little bit longer than everything else. But those are the varieties of what I'm starting, and everything that I think is important to start inside for a large garden space. But you can downscale and start, on these little, like this one is a 4. All of these varieties that I planted, you don't have to plant entire little packs. You could put each thing that sounded great to you. Say you want to do baby's breath and bunny tails and 2 different color asters. You could make 1 of these each thing, and that would give you enough. Let's say you only have 3 or 4 little garden spots. So you don't have to do it on the scale that I am doing it. But for my scale garden, this is what I'm starting, and I'm also starting some of these to sale. Now, I don't do huge amounts of plants to sale because I can only, once I pot those up into the small pots and the larger pots, I can only fit so many in the truck or the van to transport because you can't stack them. So you think of 2 6-foot tables at a sale with pots all over it and a few of, it's not a ton. So once I up pot these, that's going to go really far. And I will keep you up to date through mostly the shorts videos, but maybe some longer ones with like the greenhouse tour and the garden tours. Those would be longer ones. So I will keep you up to date as we go through the season. But hopefully next week I will be back in the kitchen and I will see you there. Thanks for sitting through this video and looking at the exciting things that are coming to my garden this year. See you later, guys.